I was standing at the iron gates of my son's new mansion, holding a homemade peach cobbler that was still warm from my oven, and staring at an intercom system that looked like it cost more than my car. The invitation had come 3 days ago via text message. "Mom, I want you to see the new house Sunday at 2 p.m. Don't be late." No warmth, no "I love you," no "I can't wait to show you." Just the address and a time, like I was a service appointment. Not his mother, but I had been so excited, so hopeful. That maybe finally, after years of growing distance, my son Marcus wanted to reconnect. Wanted to show his mama what he had accomplished. Wanted me to be part of his new life. I had spent all morning getting ready. Put on my best church dress, the navy blue one with the white collar, did my hair just right, even put on the pearl earrings Marcus's father had given me before he passed, made sure the cobbler was perfect because peach cobbler was Marcus's favorite since he was a little boy. And now, I was standing at these massive gates in the Georgia heat with sweat starting to form on my upper lip and my heart full of hope pressing the button on that intercom and waiting a woman's voice came through the speaker crisp, professional, cold, "Good afternoon. How may I help you?" "Hi, my name is Mary Thompson. I'm here to see Marcus, my son. He invited me." There was a pause, a long pause where I could hear papers rustling, or maybe it was a keyboard clicking. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I don't see your name on the guest list for today." My stomach dropped. There must be some mistake. My son Marcus invited me. Himself. He sent me a text with this address, told me to come at 2 p.m. It's 2 p.m. now. I'm his mother. "One moment, please." The intercom went silent, and I stood there in the August sun feeling foolish, holding my cobbler, watching a bead of condensation roll down the side of the dish. I looked up at the security camera mounted on the gatepost and waved awkwardly like, maybe if they could see me, see that I was just a normal woman, a mother who had been invited, they would realize the mistake and let me in. 5 minutes passed, then 10. I pressed the button again. "Hello, excuse me, I'm still waiting." "Ma'am, I've checked with the household." "Manager, you are not on the approved guest list. I'm going to have to ask you to leave the property." "But my son invited me. Can you just call him? Can you just tell Marcus his mama is here?" "Ma'am, if you don't leave, I will have to call security." Something inside me cracked right there, standing at those gates. I physically felt something break in my chest, like a bone snapping. My name is Mary Elizabeth Thompson. I'm 55 years old, and I have spent the last 32 years of my life being Marcus's mother. 32 years of sacrifice and love and putting him first. 32 years of believing that all the hard times would be worth it, because I was raising a good man, a successful man, a man who would take care of his mama, the way I had taken care of him, and now I was standing at his gate being told I wasn't on the list, like I was some stranger, some solicitor, some nobody who didn't belong in his new fancy world. I should have seen it coming. I know that now. But when you love someone, when you've given them everything you have, it's hard to see the truth, even when it's staring you right in the face. So let me take you back. Let me tell you the whole story of how I ended up at those gates and what I did about it, because this story doesn't end with me driving away. This story ends with me taking back every single thing I ever gave him. Marcus was born when I was 23 years old. His father Raymond and I had been married for 2 years. We were young and broke, living in a tiny 2-bedroom apartment in Atlanta. Raymond worked construction. I worked as a receptionist at a dental office, and we were happy we didn't have much, but we had each other, and we had dreams. When Marcus was born, he was the most beautiful baby I had ever seen. 8 pounds 6 ounces with a head full of black curly hair and eyes that looked right into your soul. I held him in that hospital room, and I made him a promise. I promised that baby that I would give him every opportunity I never had, that I would make sure he got an education, that he would never go hungry, never feel unsafe, never doubt that he was loved. And I kept that promise every single day for 32 years. Raymond died when Marcus was only 7 years old. A construction accident, a fall from scaffolding that broke his neck, killed him instantly. One day, I had a husband, a partner, a man who loved me. And the next day, I was a widow with a 7-year-old son and a mountain of medical debt from the hospital. Trying to save him, I had no life insurance. Raymond had been young and healthy, and we had been broke. We had always said we would get it later. Later never came. I had to sell our car, sell our furniture, sell everything we owned just to pay for the funeral. And then I had to figure out how to raise my son alone, how to be both mother and father, how to keep food on the table and a roof over our heads, and still somehow give Marcus the life I had promised him. I worked 3 jobs for years. I kept my receptionist job during the day, cleaned offices at night, and worked weekends at a catering company. I saw Marcus in the mornings before school and late at night, when I finally dragged myself home, exhausted barely. Able to stand, but I made sure he had everything he needed. Good clothes, not hand-me-downs or thrift store finds, but good clothes, so the kids at school wouldn't make fun of him. School supplies every single thing on the teacher's list, even when I had to choose between that and eating lunch myself. I made sure he could go on school field trips, made sure he could play sports, made sure he never felt like he was missing out because his daddy was gone. I worked myself to the bone. And I did. It gladly, because I loved that boy more than I loved my own life. Marcus was smart, always had been by the time he was in middle school. His teachers were telling me he was gifted, that he could go far if he applied himself. And he did. He worked hard, got straight A's, joined the debate team, the math club, the science Olympiad. He was everything I had dreamed he would be: focused, ambitious, determined to make something of himself when he got accepted to Georgia Tech with a full academic scholarship. I cried for 3 days straight. I had done it. I had kept my promise to that baby in the hospital. I had given him his chance. College was hard, not academically. Marcus excelled at Georgia Tech, but financially, even with the scholarship, there were key expenses, books fees, lab costs, housing that weren't covered. I picked up a 4th job working as a cashier at a grocery store on Sunday mornings, the only time I had free. I sent Marcus every extra penny I had. I ate ramen noodles and peanut butter, sandwiches, so he could have meal plan money. I wore shoes with holes in them, so he could have a good laptop. I let my own health insurance lapse, so he could join a professional fraternity that would help him network. I sacrificed everything, and I didn't tell him, didn't want him to feel guilty, didn't want him to worry. I just wanted him to succeed, and he did. Marcus graduated, summa cum laude, with a degree in computer engineering, got a job at a tech company in Atlanta. Starting salary was $75,000, which seemed like all the money in the world to me. I was so proud, so relieved that finally all the hard work had paid off. Finally, things would get easier. Marcus was going to be okay. He was going to have the life I had always wanted for him, and maybe, just maybe, he would help me out. A little. Help me finally catch my breath, finally stop working myself to death. But that's not what happened. Marcus moved into a nice apartment in Midtown, started wearing expensive clothes, driving a nice car, going to fancy restaurants and clubs. I was still in my same small apartment in College Park, still working my receptionist job, still struggling to pay bills. Marcus would come visit once in a while, usually when he needed. Something needed me to cook him a home-cooked meal, because he missed my cooking, needed to do his laundry, because the laundromat was expensive, needed advice about work or dating or life, and I gave him everything I always had. I cooked his favorite meals, washed and folded, his laundry, listened to his problems, gave him advice. And I never asked for anything in return, never mentioned that my car was breaking down, or that I was behind on my electric bill, or that I had been having chest pains. But couldn't afford to see a doctor, because I didn't want to burden him, didn't want to make him feel obligated. I had raised him to be independent, to chase his dreams. And I thought that's what good mothers did. They gave without expecting anything. Back Marcus got promoted, became a senior engineer, then a team leader, then a project manager. His salary doubled, then tripled. He moved to a bigger apartment, then bought a condo, then started talking about buying a house. He wore custom suits, drove a Tesla 8, at restaurants where a single meal cost more than my weekly grocery budget, and I was happy for him. I really was. I had worked my whole life to give him these opportunities, so how could I be anything but proud when he achieved them? But I won't lie. There was a small part of me that wondered when he would remember me, when he would notice that I was still struggling. Still living paycheck to paycheck, still wearing the same clothes I had worn 10 years ago. I never said anything. Though never asked for help, I just kept being his mama, kept cooking him meals when he visited, kept listening to his problems, kept telling him how proud I was, and hoping that one day he would see that I needed him the way he had once needed me. Then Marcus met Victoria. I knew about her before I met her. Marcus had mentioned he was dating someone from work, someone who came from money, whose family owned a chain of luxury car dealerships. Victoria Ashford. Her name alone sounded expensive. Marcus talked about her constantly, how smart she was, how sophisticated, how she had gone to private schools and spent summers in Europe, how her father was teaching him about investments and wealth management and business. I should have been happy that my son had found someone. But every time he talked about Victoria and her family, I felt myself getting smaller, felt the distance between us growing. I finally met Victoria at Marcus's condo for dinner. He had invited me one Sunday, and I had been so excited finally I would meet the woman who had captured my son's heart. Finally, I would have another woman in the family, someone I could bond with, someone who would maybe help me stay connected to my son as he built his new life. Victoria was beautiful. I'll give her that, tall and slim with long, straight hair that had clearly been professionally done. She wore a white silk blouse and designer jeans and shoes that probably cost more than my rent. She smiled when Marcus introduced us, shook my hand with fingers that had never done a day of hard work, and said, "It's so nice to finally meet you, Mrs. Thompson. Marcus has told me so much about you." But her eyes were cold. Calculating, she looked at my discount store dress, my worn shoes, my hands that were rough from decades of cleaning and working, and I saw her judgment, saw her deciding in that instant that I was not good enough for her world, not sophisticated enough, not wealthy enough, not important enough. Dinner was awkward. Victoria talked about her job at the tech company. She was in marketing. She talked about her family's business, her father's latest acquisition, her mother's charity work, her brother's investment firm. She talked about the countries she had traveled, to the restaurants she had eaten at, the shows she had seen on Broadway, and I sat there with nothing to contribute, nothing to add to this conversation about a world I had never been part of. Marcus tried to include me, asked about my job, about my church, about my neighbors, but even his attempts to bring me into the conversation just highlighted how different my life was from theirs, how small my world was compared to the one he now inhabited. I left that dinner feeling like I had failed. Some test like Victoria had measured me and found me wanting. 6 months later, Marcus called to tell me he and Victoria were engaged. I congratulated him, told him I was happy for him, and I wanted my son to be happy, wanted him to have love and companionship and a partner in life. But when he told me about the proposal, about how he had flown Victoria to Paris, proposed at the top of the Eiffel Tower with a ring that cost $30,000, I felt sick. $30,000. For a ring when I was eating cereal for dinner because I couldn't afford anything else, $30,000 when my car had just broken down and I was taking the bus to work, $30,000 when I had sacrificed everything, given up, everything to raise him, and he had never once offered to help me. Never once thought that maybe his mama could use a little financial support. The wedding was extravagant, held at the Atlanta Botanical Garden. With 300 guests I was invited. Of course I was his mother, but I felt like a guest, not family. Victoria's mother Claire had taken over. All the planning had made. All the decisions had turned the wedding into a showcase for their family's wealth and status. I offered to help, offered to make the wedding cake. I'm a good baker, always have been. But Claire just smiled, that same cold smile Victoria had, and said, "Oh, Mrs. Thompson, that's so sweet. But we've already hired a renowned pastry chef from New York, but thank you for offering." I asked if I could at least host the rehearsal dinner that was traditional. The groom's family hosted the rehearsal dinner, But Marcus said Victoria's father had already arranged. Everything had booked a private room at one of Atlanta's most expensive. Restaurants had hired caterers and musicians and event planners. "Don't worry about it, Mom." Marcus said, "Just come and enjoy yourself. You don't need to stress about any of the planning." But I wanted to contribute, wanted to be part of it, wanted to feel like I mattered in my own son's wedding, so I insisted I wanted to buy Marcus's wedding gift, wanted to give him something meaningful, something that showed how much I loved him, how proud I was. I had been saving money, not much, just a little bit each week from my receptionist salary, and I had about $3,000 saved. I had been planning to use it to finally fix my car, maybe buy myself some new clothes, but I spent it all on Marcus and Victoria's wedding gift. I bought them a beautiful set of luggage, leather, expensive, the kind of luggage people like them would use for their European vacations and exotic honeymoons. I had it monogrammed with their initials. I wrapped it myself with expensive paper and a big bow. I was so proud of that gift, so excited to give it to Theme. At the rehearsal dinner, I gave them the luggage. Victoria opened it, smiled, and said, "Oh, how practical, thank you, Mrs. Thompson." And then she set it aside and opened the next gift from her parents, who had given them a down payment on a house, $50,000, just handed to them like it was nothing. And everyone oohed and awed and congratulated them, and my luggage sat in the corner. Forgotten practical, that word echoed in my head. For days after the wedding, practical, not thoughtful, not generous, not meaningful, just practical like a vacuum cleaner or a dish rack. Something useful, but not special, not worthy of appreciation. The wedding itself was beautiful. I won't deny that Victoria looked like a princess. Marcus looked handsome in his custom tuxedo. They said their vows under an arch of white roses and peonies. They had a 7-tier cake decorated with edible gold leaf. They had a 12-piece band and an open bar and a menu that included filet mignon and lobster and champagne that cost more per bottle than I made in a week. I sat at a table in the back, not at the head table, not with family, but at a table with distant relatives. I had never met aunts and uncles from Raymond's side of the family, who had never bothered to help me raise Marcus, but who had showed up for the free food and the open bar. I watched my son dance with his bride, watched him laugh with Victoria's father, watched him toast with his new brothers-in-law, watched him move through this world of wealth and privilege, like he had always belonged there, and I felt like a ghost, like I was watching his life through a window, but I wasn't part of it anymore, wasn't needed anymore, had served my purpose and could now be set aside. I went home that night, took off my dress, the one I had worn to Marcus's father's funeral and his college graduation and now his wedding, and I cried. I cried for the little boy who used to hug me and tell me I was the best mama in the world. I cried for all the sacrifices I had made that now seemed pointless. I cried because I realized that the son I had raised, the boy I had loved and nurtured and given everything to, was gone. And in his place was a stranger who looked like Marcus, but didn't act like him, didn't love like him, didn't remember where he came from. After the wedding, Marcus and Victoria bought a house in Buckhead, one of Atlanta's wealthiest neighborhoods. I never saw it, never got invited. Marcus would tell me about it when he called once every few weeks, how they were renovating, how they were adding a pool, how they had hired an interior designer from New York. But he never said, "Come over, Mom. Come see it. Come spend time with us." And I didn't invite myself, didn't want to be a burden, didn't want to show up where I wasn't wanted. I just kept working, kept living my small, quiet life, and kept hoping that one day Marcus would remember. Then came the promotions. Marcus got promoted to director, then senior director, then vice president. His salary was now in the mid-6 figures. He and Victoria traveled to Europe, to Asia, to South America. They posted photos on social media, standing in front of the Eiffel Tower, the Great Wall, the Machu Picchu, photos of expensive dinners, designer shopping bags, luxury hotel rooms. They were living a life I couldn't even imagine, a life so far removed from the 2-bedroom apartment where Marcus had grown up from the nights when I had held him while he cried for his daddy, from the times when dinner was beans and rice, because that's all we could afford, and through all of this, through all his success and wealth. Marcus never once offered to help me, never asked if I needed anything, never seemed to notice or care that I was still struggling, still working full-time at 55 years old, still driving a car that was falling apart, still living in the same small apartment, still eating ramen noodles for dinner. I didn't ask him for help. My pride wouldn't let me, but I thought maybe he would offer, maybe he would remember all the times I had gone without, so he could have, maybe he would want to give back to the woman who had given him everything. But he didn't, and slowly I began to realize that the son I had raised didn't exist anymore, had been replaced by someone else, someone who cared more about wealth and status and impressing Victoria's family than about the woman who had sacrificed her entire life for him. Then Marcus and Victoria moved to the mansion, the one with the gates and the intercom and the security cameras. They had sold their Buckhead house for $2 million and bought this new place, a 10,000 square foot mansion on 5 acres. In an exclusive gated community. I knew about it because Marcus posted photos on social media, sweeping driveway, circular fountain marble columns, rooms bigger than my entire apartment, chandeliers that probably cost more than I had made in my entire life. Victoria posted photos of the moving process, the interior designer, the furniture shopping, the art collection they were assembling. I looked at those photos and I felt nothing. No pride, no happiness, no connection, just emptiness I hadn't seen. Marcus in person. In almost a year, we talked on the phone occasionally, brief conversations where he told me about work, about his latest vacation, about the new car he bought, and I listened and made appropriate noises and pretended like everything was fine, like it didn't hurt that he never asked about my life, never asked if I needed anything, never invited me to visit. I had stopped expecting anything from him, had made peace with the fact that I had lost my son to this world of wealth and status. And then 3 days ago, I got the text, "Mom, I want you to see the new house. Sunday at 2 p.m., don't be late." And just like that, all my hope came rushing back. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was Marcus finally ready to include me in his life. Maybe he had realized how much time had passed, how distant we had become. Maybe he wanted to rebuild our relationship. I spent 3 days planning what I would wear, what I would bring, how I would act. I was so excited, so hopeful, so stupid, and that's how I ended up at those gates, holding my peach cobbler, being told I wasn't on the list, watching that hope shatter into a million pieces. I stood there for a few more minutes, trying to process what was happening, trying to understand how I had gotten here, how my own son could invite me to his house and then not put me on the approved guest list. Was it a mistake? Had he forgotten? Had Victoria done this on purpose to humiliate me? I didn't know. I just knew that I was standing in the hot sun, feeling like a fool, and I needed to leave before I broke down completely. I walked back to my car, put the cobbler on the passenger seat, and sat there for a long time, just staring at nothing. Finally, I started the car and drove away. And as I drove, something shifted inside me. The hurt and humiliation I felt started to harden into something else, something colder, something that had been building for years, anger. I drove home in a daze, went into my apartment, set the cobbler on the kitchen counter and stood there in my church dress and pearl earrings, and I let myself feel everything I had been suppressing for years. I felt the exhaustion from decades of working multiple jobs. I felt the pain of every sacrifice I had made. I felt the loneliness of raising Marcus alone. I felt the hurt of being excluded from his life. I felt the anger at being taken for granted, at being forgotten, at being treated like I didn't matter, and I felt something else, something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt like I deserved better. I deserved respect, appreciation, recognition for everything I had done. I had given Marcus everything, and he had given me nothing, not even the basic courtesy of putting his own mother on the guest list. I took off my dress, hung it up, took off my earrings, put them away, and changed into comfortable clothes. And then I sat down at my kitchen table and I started thinking about Marcus's education, about all the money I had spent putting him through college. Even with the scholarship, there had been expenses, thousands and thousands of dollars in expenses that I had covered. I started thinking about the interest that money would have earned if I had invested it, instead of giving it to him. I started thinking about all the meals I had cooked, the laundry I had done, the advice I had given, the emotional support I had provided, and I started calculating what all of that would be worth if Marcus had paid for it, the way he would have paid for any other service. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a financial expert. I'm a receptionist at a dental office. But I know how to research. I know how to use Google. And over the next several hours I researched. I looked up how much people pay for private school tutoring, because that's essentially what I had provided, helping Marcus with homework every night. For years, I looked up how much people pay for life coaching, because that's what I had been giving him, advice and guidance and emotional support. I looked up how much personal chefs charge, because I had been cooking all his meals. I looked up laundry service costs, cleaning service costs, all of it, and I started making a list and calculating, and by the time I was done, I had a number: $278,000. That's what all the services I had provided would have cost if Marcus had had to pay for them at market rates, and that didn't even include the actual money I had given him, thousands of dollars over the years, for books, fees, supplies. Spending money, emergency funds, all the times he had needed something, and I had found a way to give it to him, even when I couldn't afford it. $278,000, plus probably another $50,000 in direct financial support. That was $328,000 that Marcus owed me, $328,000 that he had never acknowledged, never thanked me for, never offered to pay back. And I knew what you're thinking. You're thinking, mothers don't keep score. Mothers give without expecting anything in return. Mothers love unconditionally. And you're right, that's what I had always believed. That's how I had lived my life. But standing at those gates being told I wasn't on the list, something in me had broken, and I realized that unconditional love shouldn't mean unconditional disrespect, that giving without expecting anything in return is noble, until the person receiving starts taking you for granted, starts treating you like you don't matter, starts forgetting that you're a human being with feelings and needs and dignity. I spent the next week doing more research. I found a lawyer, a woman named Janice Morrison, who specialized in family law. I called. Her office made an appointment, and on Tuesday afternoon, I went to see her. Janice was a black woman in her early 40s, sharply dressed with intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense manner. I told her my story, told her about raising Marcus alone, about all the sacrifices I had made, about the distance that had grown between us, about the gates and being told I wasn't on the list. Janice listened without interrupting, and when I was done, she leaned back in her chair and looked at me for a long moment. "Mrs. Thompson, what exactly do you want from your son?" "I want him to acknowledge what I did for him," I said. "I want him to understand that I sacrificed my entire life to give him opportunities, and he can't just forget about me like I don't exist, do." "You want money?" Janice asked bluntly. "Is that what this is about?" I thought about that question, really thought about it. "It's not about the money," I said slowly. "It's about respect. It's about recognition. I'm not asking him to support me financially. I can take care of myself, but I am asking him to acknowledge that he owes his success to me, that everything he has, everything he's accomplished came at a cost to me, and I deserve better than being left off the guest list at his own house." Janice nodded. "I understand and I appreciate your honesty, but here's the reality. There's no legal basis for you to sue your son for the cost of raising him. Courts have consistently held that parents have a legal obligation to support their children, and that obligation doesn't create a debt that children have to repay." "So there's nothing I can do?" I asked. Feeling defeated, I didn't say that. Janice replied, "You can't sue him for raising him, but you do have other options. You said you gave him money directly over the years for college expenses, for emergencies. Do you have documentation of that?" I thought about it. Some of it I have bank statements showing transfers. I have receipts for some of the things I bought him. That's a start. Janice said, if you can prove that you gave him money with the expectation of repayment, you might have a case for a loan that he defaulted on. But Mrs. Thompson, I have to be honest with you, even if you win, which is not guaranteed, you'll spend thousands. On legal fees, you'll destroy whatever relationship you have left with your son, and you'll probably get a judgment that he refuses to pay, and then you'll have to try to collect, which is another nightmare. Is that really what you want? I sat there in Janice's office, and I realized she was right. A lawsuit wasn't the answer. It wouldn't give me what I really wanted, which was my son back. It wouldn't make Marcus suddenly appreciate me, suddenly remember all I had done for him. It would just make everything worse and cost me money I couldn't afford to spend. So what do? I asked. How do I make him understand? Sometimes, Janice said gently, people don't understand until they lose something, until they experience the absence of what they took for granted. You've been making it easy for Marcus to ignore you, to take you for granted, to treat you like you don't matter. Maybe it's time to stop making it easy. What do you mean? I mean, maybe it's time to focus on yourself, Janice said. Stop reaching out to him. Stop being available whenever he decides he needs you. Stop accepting crumbs and hoping for more. You can't force him to appreciate you, but you can stop giving him the opportunity to take you for granted. I left Janice's office with a lot to think about. Part of me wanted to march over to Marcus's mansion, bang on those gates until someone let me in and force him to face me, force him to acknowledge what he had done. But I knew that wouldn't work. You can't force someone to care. You can't make someone love you. All you can do is decide how you're going to respond to their lack of love and respect. And I decided I was done. I was done chasing Marcus, done hoping he would change, done accepting whatever scraps of attention he threw my way. I was done being treated like I didn't matter, and I was going to show him exactly what he was losing. The first thing I did was block Marcus's number on my phone. I know that sounds drastic, but I needed to stop being available at his convenience, needed to stop jumping every time he called or texted, needed to create distance and boundaries. I also blocked Victoria, blocked them both on social media, blocked their emails, blocked every method they had of contacting me, and then I did something I had never done before. I started living for myself. I had spent 32 years of my life putting Marcus first, making every decision based on what was best for him, what would give him the best opportunities. And now I was going to put myself first for once in my life. I had $3,000 in my savings account. The money I had been planning to use to fix my car, to buy new clothes, to do all the things I had been putting off. But now, I decided to use that money differently. I booked a trip to New York City. I had never had the time or the money, but I had always wanted to see the Statue of Liberty and Times Square and a Broadway show. I booked a 4-day trip, found a decent hotel in Midtown, bought a plane ticket, and for the first time in my life, I did something purely for myself, just because I wanted to. I also started going to therapy. I found a counselor who worked on a sliding scale, someone I could afford, and I started working through all the feelings I had been suppressing for years, the grief over losing Raymond, the exhaustion from decades of struggling, the hurt from Marcus's rejection, all of it. I started taking care of myself in ways I never had before. It took exactly 11 days for Marcus to notice that I had blocked him. I know because on the 11th day, after I got home from work, I found him sitting in his Tesla outside my apartment building waiting for me. I almost didn't recognize him. At first he was wearing a suit, clearly had come from work, and he looked agitated, upset. He got out of the car when he saw me. "Mom, what the hell?" he said. "Why did you block me? I've been trying to call you for days." "Have you?" I said calmly. "Yes," he said. "Victoria and I have been worried. We thought something happened to you." "Did you?" I asked, and I could hear the edge in my voice. "Or did you just notice that I wasn't available anymore, that you couldn't reach me on the rare occasions?" When you remembered I existed, Marcus looked taken aback. "What are you talking about?" I'm talking about 2 weeks ago, when you invited me to your new house and then didn't put me on the guest list. I said, I'm talking about standing at your gates, like a fool being told by your maid that I wasn't approved to enter. That was a mistake, Marcus said quickly. The security company must have messed up the list. Really? I said, because I asked them to call you, and they said no, that the household manager had confirmed I wasn't on the list, so either your household manager made a unilateral decision to exclude your mother or someone told them not to put me on that list. And either way, you never followed up, never called to see why I didn't show up, never wondered where I was until I blocked you, and suddenly you couldn't reach me anymore. Mom. You're being ridiculous, Marcus said, and that word ridiculous felt like a slap. I'm being ridiculous, I repeated. I spent 32 years raising you alone, working 3 jobs to give you everything you needed, sacrificing my health, my happiness, my entire life so you could have opportunities. And now when I expect basic respect, basic consideration, I'm being ridiculous. I appreciate everything you did, Mom, Marcus said, but his tone was impatient, like he was dealing with a difficult child. But that was your job. That's what parents do. You don't get to hold it over my head forever. I'm not trying to hold it over your head. I said, I'm trying to make you understand that you've been taking me for granted, that you've been treating me like I don't matter, and I'm done accepting that. What do you want from me? Marcus asked, and there was real frustration in his voice. Do you want money? Is that what this is about? I don't want your money. Marcus, I said, I want my son back. I want the boy who used to hug me and tell me he loved me, who used to appreciate what I did for him, who used to care about me as a person, not just as someone who could provide something for him. I do care about you, Marcus said. Do you? I asked, when's the last time you asked how I was doing and really listened to the answer? When's the last time you invited me to your house, not as an afterthought, but because you genuinely wanted to spend time with me? When's the last time you thought about anyone other than yourself and Victoria and your fancy lifestyle? Marcus's face hardened. You're jealous, he said. That's what this is really about. You're jealous that I'm successful, that I have money, that I married someone from a good family. I'm not jealous of your success, Marcus, I said, and I could feel tears starting to form. I'm proud of your success. I'm proud that you've done well for yourself, but I'm hurt that your success came with amnesia, that you've forgotten where you came from, forgotten who helped you get there, forgotten that your mother still exists and has feelings and deserves to be treated with respect. I have treated you with respect, Marcus said. No, you haven't. I said, you've treated me like an obligation, like something you have to deal with when it's convenient, like someone who exists in the background of your life, but doesn't really matter. And I'm done with that. I'm done being treated like I'm not important. So what are you going to do? Marcus asked. Just cut me off, never speak to me again. I'm going to do what I should have done years ago. I said, I'm going to live my life for myself. I'm going to stop waiting for you to remember me, to appreciate me, to treat me like I matter. I'm going to stop making myself available at your convenience and start focusing on my own happiness. And if that means we don't have a relationship anymore, then that's on you, not me. You're being dramatic, Marcus said. Maybe, I agreed. Or maybe I'm finally standing up for myself. Maybe I'm finally realizing that I deserve better than what you've been giving me. Marcus stood there for a moment, looking at me like he didn't recognize me. Fine. He finally said, if that's how you want it, call me when you're ready to be reasonable. And he got in his Tesla and drove away. I stood there watching him leave, and I didn't feel sad. I felt relieved. I felt like I had finally said what I needed to say, had finally stood up for myself, had finally stopped accepting crumbs and demanding the respect I deserved. And even though it hurt, even though part of me wanted to run after him and apologize and take it all back, I didn't, because I knew I was right. I knew I deserved better, and I knew that if Marcus couldn't see that, then that was his problem. Not mine. Over the next few weeks, I focused on myself, I went to New York and had an amazing time. I saw 3 Broadway shows, I visited the Metropolitan Museum of Art, I ate at amazing restaurants, I walked through Central Park, and I felt free for the first time in decades. I felt like I was living for myself, not for someone else, not for my son's future, but for my own present. And it was glorious when I got back. I kept going to therapy, kept working on myself, kept building a life that made me happy. I joined a book club at my church, made new friends, started taking a painting class at the community center. I started dating a kind man named William, who was a retired teacher, who treated me with respect and consideration, and who seemed genuinely interested in me as a person. I was building a life that didn't revolve around Marcus, and it felt good. It took 3 months for Victoria to reach out. She called my office. Apparently, Marcus had given her my work number. "Mrs. Thompson, it's Victoria. We need to talk." "About what?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "About Marcus," she said. "He's been upset since your conversation. He's been distant, distracted. It's affecting his work, and honestly, it's affecting our marriage." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, "but I don't see how that's my problem. You're his mother," Victoria said, and I could hear the frustration in her voice. "You're supposed to support him, not make his life harder." "I supported Marcus for 32 years. I said, I gave him everything I had, and he took it all without appreciation, without gratitude, without even basic respect. And when I finally asked him to treat me like I mattered, he called me dramatic and ridiculous, so forgive me if I'm not rushing to make him feel better." "He didn't mean that," Victoria said. "He was upset." "So was I replied. "I was upset when I drove to your house, excited to see my son's new home, and got turned away at the gate. I was upset when Marcus never bothered to follow up, never checked on me, never apologized, and I'm upset that it took me blocking for him to even notice I was gone. So yes, Victoria, I'm sure Marcus is upset, but his feelings are not my responsibility anymore. I spent decades making sure he was okay, making sure he was happy, and now it's time for me to worry about myself." "Mrs. Thompson, please," Victoria said. And for the first time, I heard something genuine in her voice, something that sounded like actual concern. "Marcus won't admit it, but he misses you. He talks about you all the time, about things you used to do together when he was a kid, about your cooking, about how you worked so hard to give him opportunities. He knows he's messed up. He's just too proud to admit it." "Then he needs to learn to swallow his pride," I said, "because I'm not chasing him anymore. I'm not begging for his attention or his affection. I'm done with that. If Marcus wants a relationship with me, he knows where to find me, but he needs to come. Correct, he needs to apologize, he needs to acknowledge what he's done, and he needs to show me through his actions, not just his words, that he values me." "What if he doesn't?" Victoria asked quietly. "What if he's too stubborn to reach out? What if you both just let this relationship die because neither of you will take the first step?" "Then, that will be Marcus's choice," I said. "I already took the first step. I took it 32 years ago when I decided to be the best mother I could be, when I sacrificed everything to give him a good life. I've been taking steps toward him his entire life, and he's been taking steps away. So if this relationship dies, it won't be because I didn't try hard enough. It will be because Marcus decided his pride was more important than his mother." Victoria was quiet for a moment. "You know, he got the list wrong," she finally said. "What?" "The guest list that day you came to the house. It wasn't the security company that messed up, and it wasn't the household manager. It was Marcus." My heart stopped. "What do you mean?" "We were having a party that Sunday, a housewarming party for some of Marcus's colleagues and business associates. I told him to invite you, told him you should see the house, told him it had been too long since he'd seen you, and he said he would. But when he sent out the invitations, he sent you a different time, told you to come at 2 p.m. when the party didn't start until 5 p.m. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Why would he do that?" "Because he was embarrassed," Victoria said, and I could hear shame in her voice. "He was embarrassed of me, of your background, of the fact that you're not wealthy and sophisticated, like the people he works with. He didn't want his colleagues to meet. You didn't want them to know that he came from a working-class family, that his mother is a receptionist who lives in College Park, so he invited you at the wrong time, thinking you would show up, see the house leave before anyone else arrived, and he could check that box of showing you the house without actually having to introduce you to his new friends. I couldn't speak, couldn't process what I was hearing. My own son had deliberately excluded me, had been ashamed of me, the woman who had given him everything. I told him it was wrong. Victoria continued. I told him he was being horrible to you, but he wouldn't listen. He said, you wouldn't mind, said you'd understand, said it was just easier this way. And then when you showed up and weren't on the list, he should have fixed it. Should have told security to let you in. But he was in the middle of the party, and he just told them to turn you away. He said he would call you later and explain, but he never did. And you let him. I said, my voice barely a whisper. You knew all of this, and you let him treat me that way. I know, Victoria said, and she sounded genuinely regretful. I know, and I'm sorry. I should have stood up to him, should have insisted he'd do the right thing, but I didn't, and I've felt guilty about it ever since Mrs. Thompson. I'm not calling to make excuses for Marcus. He was wrong, completely wrong. But I'm calling because I think you should know the truth. You should know that it wasn't a mistake, it was a deliberate choice, and you should know that he regrets it even if he won't say it. Thank you for telling me, I said. But knowing the truth doesn't make it hurt any less. If anything, it makes it worse, because it means Marcus consciously decided I wasn't good enough for his new life. Consciously decided to humiliate me, consciously chose to protect his image over his relationship with his mother. I know, Victoria said softly, and I'm sorry. I hung up the phone and sat at my desk at the dental office where I had worked for 20 years, and I cried. I cried for the little boy who used to be proud of his mama, who used to introduce me to his friends and say, this is my mom, she's the best. I cried for all the years I had worked myself to exhaustion, believing I was building a better future for my son. I cried because I realized that all my sacrifices had been for nothing, that I had raised a man who was ashamed of me, who valued appearance and status more than love and loyalty and family. I cried because I had lost my son, not to distance or time, but to shame and ambition. And I didn't know if I could ever forgive him for that. That night, I went home, and I wrote Marcus a letter. I didn't mail it, didn't email it, just wrote it for myself to process my feelings, to say everything I needed to say. Dear Marcus, I wrote. Victoria called me today and told me the truth about what happened the day I came to your house. She told me that you deliberately invited me at the wrong time because you were ashamed of me, ashamed of where I come from, ashamed of who I am, and I want you to know that of all the things you've done that hurt me, this hurts the most, not because you're embarrassed that I'm not wealthy or sophisticated. Those things don't define a person's worth, but because you let your embarrassment override your love. You decided that impressing your colleagues was more important than honoring your mother. And that tells me everything I need to know about who you've become. I raised you to be better than this, Marcus. I raised you to value people for their character, not their bank accounts. I raised you to be loyal to family, to remember where you came from, to never forget the people who helped you get where you are. I raised you to be a man of integrity and honor, and somewhere along the way, you lost those values. You traded them for money and status and acceptance from people who don't really know you, who don't really care about you, who would drop you in a second if you stopped being useful to them. And the saddest part is, you don't even see it. You don't see that you've lost yourself chasing success. You don't see that all the money and the mansion and the impressive career mean nothing. If you don't have character, mean nothing. If you've lost the ability to love and be loyal to the people who matter. I'm not writing this to make you feel guilty, though I hope you do feel guilty. I'm writing this to say goodbye to the son I raised, to the boy I knew, to the man I hoped you would become. That person is gone, and I've spent 3 months grieving that loss, and now I'm ready to move forward. I'm ready to live my life without waiting for you to remember me, without hoping you'll change, without accepting crumbs and pretending they're enough. I deserve better. Marcus, I deserve a son who's proud of me, who values me, who treats me with respect and love. And if you can't be that son, then I'm better off without you. I want you to know that I don't regret raising you. I don't regret the sacrifices I made. I would do it all again. Because that's what love is. It's giving without expecting anything in return. But love also has limits, and you've crossed mine. I will always love you, Marcus. You're my son, and nothing can change that. But I don't like you anymore. I don't like who you've become, and I don't want to be around someone who treats me the way you've treated me. So this is me choosing myself, choosing my dignity, choosing to walk away from a relationship that only causes me pain. I hope one day you'll look back on this and understand what you lost. I hope one day you'll realize that the people who loved you when you had nothing are more valuable than the people who love you, because you have everything. I hope one day you'll learn that success without character is meaningless, and that family is more important than status. But even if that day never comes, even if you never understand what you threw away, I'll be okay, because I've learned something important too. I've learned that I am valuable with or without your approval. I've learned that my worth isn't determined by how well I served you or how much I sacrificed. I've learned that I deserve to be treated with respect and love, and if I'm not getting that, then I have the right to walk away and bye. Marcus, I'll always be your mother, but I won't always be available. I won't always be waiting. I won't always be here hoping you'll come back to me. I'm living my life now on my own terms. And if you ever decide you want to be part of that life for real, not just when it's convenient, not just when you need something, but really be part of it, then you know where to find me. But you'll have to come with humility and honesty and a genuine desire to make things right, because I'm done accepting less than I deserve. Love, Mom. I folded the letter, put it in an envelope, and put it in my drawer. I didn't send it because it wasn't for Marcus. It was for me. It was my way of processing my feelings of saying goodbye to the relationship I had wanted and accepting the reality of what it actually was. And once I had written it, I felt lighter, felt like I had finally let go of the burden I had been carrying, the burden of trying to fix a relationship that only I wanted to fix. Months passed. I kept living my life. I got promoted at work to office manager with a nice raise. I moved to a better apartment in a nicer neighborhood. William and I were getting serious. He had met my friends from church, from book club, from my painting class, and everyone loved him. He treated me with kindness and respect, asked about my day, actually listened to the answers, made me feel valued and appreciated. He knew about Marcus, knew the whole story, and he never once told me I should forgive him or give him another chance. He just supported whatever decision I made, and that support meant everything to me. I was happy, genuinely happy for the first time in years. I woke up each day, excited about my life, excited about my plans, excited about my future. And Marcus wasn't part of that anymore, wasn't something I thought about every day, wasn't a constant source of pain. I had moved on, and then one Saturday morning, almost 6 months after I had blocked Marcus, there was a knock on my door. I opened it, and there he was standing in my new apartment hallway, looking smaller, somehow less confident than I remembered. He wasn't wearing a suit, just jeans and a simple shirt, and his eyes were red like he had been crying. "Mom," he said, and his voice cracked. "Can we talk?" I stood there looking at my son, really looking at him, and I realized I didn't feel the desperate need to fix things, didn't feel the urge to immediately forgive him and pretend everything was okay. I just felt calm. "Why are you here, Marcus?" I asked. "Because I messed up," he said. "Because I've been a terrible son, because I've taken you for granted and treated you horribly, and I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, Mom." "What changed?" I asked. "What made you suddenly realize this?" "Everything," he said. "Victoria left me. She said she couldn't be married to someone who treated his mother the way I treated you. She said it showed a lack of character, and she was right, and then I got passed over for a promotion at work. And I realized all the people I thought were my friends, all those colleagues I was trying to impress, they didn't care, they didn't support me, they just moved on to the next person, and I was sitting in that big house all alone, and I realized had given up the one person who actually loved me for people who never cared about me at all. So you're here because you're lonely, I said, because Victoria left and your career isn't going perfectly, and suddenly you remember you have a mother. No, Marcus said quickly. I mean, yes, I'm lonely, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I finally understand what I did. I finally see how horrible I've been, how I took all your sacrifices for granted, how I let shame and pride destroy our relationship. I'm here because I want to make it right if you'll let me. I looked at my son standing in my hallway, looking broken and humbled, and I felt conflicted. Part of me wanted to hug him, wanted to tell him it was okay, wanted to go back to being his mother the way I used to be, but another part of me, the part that had spent 6 months healing and growing and learning to value myself, that part was wary, was cautious, wasn't ready to just forgive and forget. Marcus, I appreciate you coming here, I said. I appreciate the apology, but I need you to understand something. You didn't just hurt me. Once you hurt me repeatedly over years. You took me for granted. You were ashamed of me. You excluded me from your life. And when I finally stood up for myself, you called me ridiculous and dramatic. So yes, I hear that. You're sorry, but words are easy. Actions are hard. And I need to see through your actions that you've really changed, that you've really learned, that you really understand what you did wrong. I do understand, Marcus said, and I'll do whatever it takes to prove it to you. Whatever you need, Mom, I'll do it. What I need, I said, is time. I need time to think about whether I'm ready to let you back into my life. I need time to see if this change is real, or if you're just lonely and scared, and once things get better, you'll go back to how you were before. I've spent 6 months building a life that makes me happy, and I'm not going to risk that unless I'm sure you're sincere. How long? Marcus asked. How long do you need? I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe weeks, maybe months, maybe I'll decide I'm better off without you. I don't know. But what I do know is that I'm not going to rush this. I'm not going to make it easy for you. You need to earn your way back into my life, and that's going to take time and effort and consistent proof that you've changed. Marcus nodded, his eyes filling with tears. I understand. I'll wait however long it takes. And Marcus, I said, you need to understand something else. Even if I do decide to forgive you, things won't go back to how they were. Before, I'm not going to go back to sacrificing everything for you, to putting your needs ahead of my own, to accepting whatever scraps of attention you throw my way. If we rebuild our relationship, it's going to be different. It's going to be equal. It's going to be based on mutual respect and consideration. Do you understand? Yes, Marcus said. I understand, and Mom, I want that too. I want a real relationship with you, not the one-sided thing we had before. I nodded. Okay, then give me time and we'll see. Marcus left, and I closed the door and leaned against it, feeling emotionally exhausted but also strangely hopeful. Maybe Marcus really had learned. Maybe this experience had changed him. Maybe we could rebuild our relationship into something healthier, something better. Or maybe he hadn't changed. Maybe this was just temporary. Maybe once his life got back on track, he would forget about me again. I didn't know. But what I did know was that I wasn't going to rush into anything. I wasn't going to make it easy. I was going to protect myself and my peace. And if Marcus really wanted to be part of my life, he was going to have to prove it over the next few weeks. Marcus tried. He really tried. He called me once a week, always at a time. We had agreed on never demanding, never assuming I would drop everything to talk to him. He sent me flowers with notes that said things like, thinking of you and I'm sorry. He asked if he could take me to dinner, and when I said I wasn't ready, he accepted it, without argument, without trying to guilt me. He sent me photos of himself volunteering at a community center, teaching kids about computers and coding. I remembered what you always said, he wrote, about giving back to the community, about helping people who need it. I should have been doing this all along. He was trying, and I could see it, could feel it. But I was still cautious, still protecting my heart, still watching to see if this change would last. Then one day, about 2 months after Marcus had shown up at my door, I got a letter in the mail from Victoria. I almost didn't open. It wasn't sure. I wanted to hear from her, but curiosity got the better of me. Dear Mrs. Thompson, the letter began, I wanted to write to you to apologize for my part in how Marcus treated you. I knew what he was doing was wrong and I didn't stop it. I went along with it because I was raised to believe that appearances matter more than anything else, that your social status and wealth define your worth, and I let those values poison my marriage and hurt you in the process. I'm writing to tell you that I've left Marcus, not because I don't love him, but because I couldn't be married to someone who had lost his moral compass, and I'm writing to tell you that your son has been devastated by losing you. More devastated than he was by losing me or his promotion or anything else. He talks about you constantly, about his regrets, about how he wishes he could go back and do things differently. I believe he's genuinely changed. Mrs. Thompson, I believe losing you shocked him into seeing what really matters in life. And while I know I have no right to ask you for anything, I'm asking you to give him a chance, not for his sake, but for yours, because I think you both deserve to have each other in your lives the right way this time. Sincerely, Victoria, I read. That letter 3 times, processing Victoria's words, thinking about everything that had happened. And I realized something important. I had been so focused on protecting myself, on making sure Marcus really changed, on not getting hurt again, that I had forgotten something essential. Forgiveness isn't about the other person. It's about you. It's about releasing the anger and hurt that's weighing you down. It's about choosing peace over pain. And yes, Marcus needed to prove he had changed. Yes, he needed to earn his way back into my life. But I also needed to be open to the possibility of forgiveness, needed to be willing to let go of my hurt and anger if I wanted to move forward. I called Marcus that night, instead of waiting for our scheduled, "Call Marcus, it's Mom." "Mom, hi, is everything okay?" He sounded surprised, worried. "Everything's fine." I said, "I just wanted to talk to you." "Okay?" He said, "I'm listening." I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened, about where we went wrong, about what we both need to do to fix this. And I've realized something I've been so focused on, whether you've changed, on whether I can trust you again, that I haven't been honest with myself about my own role in this. "Mom, you didn't do anything wrong." Marcus said, "Yes, I did." I replied, "I did do something wrong. I let you take me for granted. I never set boundaries, never told you when you hurt me, never stood up for myself until it was too late. I taught you that it was okay to treat me poorly because I accepted it, and I need to take responsibility for that. But Mom, you were just trying to be a good mother." "I was trying to be a perfect mother," I corrected. And in doing that, I lost myself. I stopped being a person with my own needs and wants and became just a provider, a servant, someone who existed solely to support you. And that wasn't healthy for either of us. Marcus was quiet for a moment. "I never thought about it that way." He finally said, "I never realized that you were sacrificing so much. I just thought that's how you were, I thought. You were happy doing all those things for me." "I was happy," I said, "but I was also exhausted and lonely and scared that if I stopped giving you everything you needed, you would stop loving me. And eventually that's exactly what happened. Not because I stopped giving, but because I had nothing left to give." "Mom, I'm so sorry," Marcus said, and I could hear tears in his voice. "I'm sorry. I took advantage of you. I'm sorry I didn't see what you were going through. I'm sorry I let you sacrifice so much for me without ever giving anything back." "I know you are," I said, "and I'm ready to forgive you, Marcus. I'm ready to try to rebuild our relationship, but we're doing it differently this time. We're doing it as equals, not as perfect self-sacrificing. Mother and ungrateful child, but as two adults who love each other and want to have a healthy relationship with boundaries and mutual respect. I want that too, Marcus said. I want that more than anything. Good, I said. Then let's start over. Let's build something new, something better. And we did, Marcus. And I started meeting for lunch once a week, just the two of us talking, really talking about our lives, our feelings, our hopes and fears. He told me about his job, about the pressure he felt to succeed, about how he had gotten lost in the pursuit of wealth and status. I told him about my life, about William, about my new friends, about the joy I had found in living for myself. We talked about Raymond, about the dad Marcus barely remembered, but whose loss had shaped both our lives. We talked about the hard years when money was tight and I was working multiple jobs, and Marcus admitted he remembered more than I thought he did, remembered me coming home. Exhausted, remembered the nights. When dinner was sparse, remembered how hard I had worked. I took it for granted, he said, during one of our lunches, about 3 months after we had started rebuilding our relationship. I took all of it for granted. I thought everyone's mom worked. That hard thought everyone had a parent who would sacrifice anything for them. I didn't understand how rare that was, how special you were. I wasn't special. I said I was just doing what I thought I needed to do. You were special, Marcus insisted. You are special. And I'm sorry it took me so long to see that. He also told me about his marriage, about how Victoria had opened his eyes to his own behavior, about how losing her had made him realize what really mattered. I was trying so hard to fit into her world, he said, trying to be someone I wasn't trying to hide where I came from, and in doing that, I lost myself, and I hurt the person who mattered most. Do you still love her? I asked. I do. He admitted, but I understand why she left. I understand that I wasn't the man she thought she married, that I let her down too, and I need to work on myself before I can be in any relationship. That's mature of you, I said. That's growth. He smiled a sad smile. I'm learning, Mom. I'm finally learning the lessons you tried to teach me all along. We also talked about money, about the $328,000 I had calculated he owed me for all the services and support I had provided. I want to pay you back, Marcus said when I told him about my calculations. I want to give you that money. Mom, you deserve it. I don't want your money, Marcus. I said, I never did. What I wanted was for you to acknowledge what I did, for you to appreciate it, to value it, and you're doing that now, and that's worth more than any amount of money. But Mom, you're still working. You're still living modestly while I have all this wealth that I wouldn't have without you. Let me help you. Let me give back some of what you gave me. I thought about it, thought about my pride and my need to prove I didn't need anything from anyone, and I realized that was just another form of the same problem that had gotten us here in the first place. Okay, I finally said, but not as repayment, not as a debt. I don't want you giving me money out of guilt or obligation. If you want to help me do it, because you love me, because you want to make my life easier, because that's what family does for each other. That's exactly why I want to do it, Marcus said. So Marcus set up a trust fund for me, enough money that I could retire if I wanted to continue working, if I chose to, but not have to worry about bills or emergencies or my future. He also insisted on buying me a new car to replace my old one that was constantly breaking down. Mom, you need reliable transportation. He said, let me do this, please. And I let him. Not because I needed it, but because I understood that giving was his way of showing love, his way of making amends, and I could accept that, now could receive his generosity without feeling like I was losing my independence or my dignity. We also talked about the mansion, about that day at the gates, about what had really happened. I was ashamed, Marcus admitted, and the honesty in his voice, the vulnerability, was something new. Something that showed me he really had changed. I was ashamed that I had come from a working-class background, ashamed that my mother wasn't wealthy and sophisticated. Like Victoria's family, ashamed that the people I was trying to impress would judge me if they knew the truth, and that shame made me do something unforgivable. I invited you at the wrong time, deliberately excluded you from the party, made you feel unwelcome in my own home, and I will regret that. For the rest of my life, Mom, I will regret that moment forever. I forgive you, I said, and I meant it. I forgive you, Marcus, because I understand that you were lost, that you had gotten caught up in a world that values the wrong things, and you forgot what really mattered. But you found your way back, and that's what's important. Thank you, he said, tears streaming down his face. Thank you for giving me another chance. That's what mothers do, I said. We give chances even when they're not deserved, even when we've been hurt, because love doesn't keep score, doesn't hold grudges, doesn't give up even when it should. But this time I'm going to deserve it, Marcus said. This time I'm going to be the son you deserve, the man you raised me to be. And he did. Marcus really changed. He introduced me to his colleagues, invited me to company events, showed me off proudly as his mother, the woman who had sacrificed everything to give him. Opportunities he volunteered regularly at the community center, teaching coding to underprivileged kids. I want to do for someone else what you did for me, he told me. I want to give opportunities to kids who don't have them, who are starting from where I started. He also reached out to Victoria, asked if they could talk, tried to make amends with her too. I owe her an apology too, he said. I owe her honesty about who I am and where I come from. I don't know if they'll get back together. That's their business, not mine. But I'm proud of Marcus for trying, for being willing to be vulnerable, to be honest, to show up as his real self one Sunday. About a year after that day at the gates, Marcus invited me to the mansion again. Mom, I want to show you the house, he said. The right way. This time, no parties, no other guests, just you and me, and I want to show you what I've been working on. I drove to those same iron gates, but this time, when I pressed the intercom button, Marcus's voice came through immediately. Mom, come in. The gates opened, and I drove up that long driveway to the circular fountain, to the marble columns, and Marcus was standing on the front steps, waiting for me with a huge smile on his face. Welcome home, Mom, he said as I got out of the car, and something about those words, home, made my heart swell. He gave me a tour of the entire house, showed me every room, told me stories about what happened in each space. This is the kitchen, he said, leading me into a massive room with marble countertops and top-of-the-line appliances. I barely use it because I can't cook, but I'm taking lessons. I want to learn to make your recipes, want to be able to cook Sunday dinner the way you used to. He showed me the library. I've been reading again, he said. All the books you used to tell me about all the classics you said were important. He showed me the pool, the home theater, the guest rooms, and then he showed me something I wasn't expecting. This is for you, he said, opening a door to a beautiful suite on the first-floor bedroom, private bathroom sitting area, with a view of the garden. This is your room, Mom. Whenever you want to visit, whenever you want to stay, you have a place here, a real place, not as a guest but as family. I looked at that beautiful room and I felt tears start to fall. Marcus, you didn't have to do this. Yes, I did, he said. I did because I want you in my life, really in my life, not just when it's convenient, but always. And I want you to know that this is your home too, that you always have a place here. We had lunch that day on the back patio overlooking the garden, and Marcus told me about his plans. I'm thinking about starting a foundation, he said, to help single mothers who are trying to put their kids through college, to provide scholarships and support for families like ours. I want to do something meaningful with the money I've made, something that would make you proud. I'm already proud of you, I said. Not because of the money or the success, but because of the man you're becoming. Because you learned from your mistakes. Because you came back. I almost didn't. Marcus admitted. I almost let my pride keep me away, almost convinced myself that you were being unreasonable, that I hadn't done anything wrong. But then I realized I was about to lose the most important person in my life. And for what? For pride, for the approval of people who don't really care about me. It wasn't worth it. Mom, you were worth swallowing my pride, worth admitting I was wrong, worth fighting to get back. I'm glad you did, I said. I'm glad you found your way back to me. Me too, he said. Me too, Mom. We sat there in the sun, eating lunch, talking and laughing, and for the first time in years it felt like we were really mother and son again. Not strangers, not people going through the motions, but two people who loved each other, who had hurt each other, who had found their way back to each other. And I realized that this was what redemption looked like. Not perfection, not pretending the hurt had never happened, but acknowledging it, learning from it, and choosing to move forward together. It's been 2 years since that day at the gates. 2 years since I stood there, with my peach cobbler being told I wasn't on the list. 2 years since my world fell apart, and I had to decide who I was going to be in response to that pain, and I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful because that moment, as painful as it was, forced me to face the truth about my relationship with Marcus, forced me to set boundaries, to demand respect, to stop accepting less than I deserved, and it forced Marcus to face the truth about himself, about who he had become, about what he had lost in his pursuit of success and status. We both grew from that pain, both learned lessons we needed to learn, both became better versions of ourselves. Marcus and I have a relationship now, a real one built on mutual respect and honest communication and healthy boundaries. I'm not his servant or his ATM. He's not my ungrateful child. We're two adults who love each other, who enjoy each other's company, who genuinely want to be part of each other's lives. I visit the mansion regularly, have my own room, my own space. I've gotten to know Marcus's colleagues, his friends, the real Marcus, not the pretend version he was trying to be. They all know about me, know my story, know that I was a single mother who worked multiple jobs to put my son through college, and they respect me for it, admire me for it. Marcus makes sure of that, makes sure everyone knows what I did for him, how he wouldn't be where he is without me. Victoria reached out to me a few months ago, asked if we could meet for coffee. I wanted to apologize in person, she said when we met. I wanted to tell you that I was wrong to go along with Marcus's behavior, that I should have stood up for you. You did, eventually, I said. You left him when you saw who he was becoming. That took courage. Not as much courage as you had, Victoria replied. You stood up for yourself when it would have been easier to just accept how he was treating you. You set boundaries when you had every reason to just be grateful for whatever relationship you could get. You're stronger than I am, Mrs. Thompson. Call me Mary, I said. And you're stronger than you think we all are. We just don't know it until we're tested. Victoria smiled. Marcus is a lucky man to have you as his mother. He knows that now. I think he finally knows how lucky he is. Marcus did eventually get back. Together with Victoria, they took it slow, worked on themselves, individually, worked on being honest with each other about who they really were, and they're engaged again, now planning another wedding. But this time, I'm not just invited. I'm part of it. Victoria asked me to help with the planning, asked for my input on everything. This is your wedding, I told her. You should do what makes you happy. But you're going to be my mother-in-law, she said. I want you to be part of this. I want this wedding to be about family, not about impressing people, about love, not about status, and I need your help to make that happen. So I've been helping planning a wedding that's beautiful, but not ostentatious, elegant, but not pretentious, meaningful. Instead of showy, Victoria and Marcus are writing their own vows. They're having the ceremony at the community center, where Marcus volunteers. They're asking guests to donate to the foundation. Marcus started, instead of giving gifts, they're doing it differently this time, doing it right. And I'm so proud of both of them, as for me, I retired from my receptionist job, decided it was time to focus on myself, on my own happiness. I travel. Now have been to places I never dreamed I would see: Paris, London, Ghana, places Raymond and I used to dream about visiting, but never had the money for. I'm living the life I always wanted, the life I put on hold to raise Marcus, and it's wonderful. William and I are talking about getting married. Nothing definite. Yet we're taking our time, but I'm happy, really, truly happy. For the first time in decades, I'm living for myself, pursuing my own dreams, surrounding myself with people who value me, and it's glorious. I look back on that day at the gates sometimes. Think about the woman I was standing there with, her peach cobbler and her hope and her desperate need to be included in her son's life, and I barely recognize her. That woman was so small, so willing to accept so little, so afraid of losing what little connection she had left. I'm not that woman anymore. I'm stronger now, more confident, more aware of my own worth. I don't need Marcus's approval to feel valuable, don't need his inclusion to feel important. I know who I am, know what I'm worth, and I won't accept anything less than I deserve anymore. And Marcus, he's not the same man either. He's humbler, now more aware, more grateful. He understands what he almost lost, understands that success means nothing if you lose yourself in the pursuit of it, understands that the people who love you when you have nothing are the ones worth keeping, the ones worth valuing, the ones worth fighting for. He tells me often how sorry he is for those years of taking me for granted, tells me he's trying every day to be better, to do better, to be the son I deserve. I can't change the past, Mom, he said to me recently. I can't take back the hurt I caused or the time we lost, but I can make sure the future is different. I can make sure you know every single day how much I love you, how much I appreciate you, how grateful I am that you never gave up on me, even when you had every reason to. I couldn't give up on you, I told him. You're my son, that doesn't change no matter what, but I can draw boundaries, can demand respect, can walk away if I need to. And knowing that makes all the difference. Knowing that I choose to be in your life not because I have to, not because I'm obligated, but because I want to, because you've earned it. I'll keep earning it. Marcus promised, every day for the rest of my life, I'll keep earning it. And I believe him. I believe that he's learned his lesson, believe that he's changed, believe that the man he is now is someone I can trust, someone I can have. A real relationship with someone who values me the way I deserve to be valued. My story could have ended so differently, could have ended with permanent estrangement, with a mother and son who never spoke again, who let pride and hurt destroy our relationship forever. But it didn't end that way, because we both chose differently. I chose to set boundaries, to demand respect, but also to remain open to the possibility of reconciliation. And Marcus chose to humble himself, to admit his mistakes, to do the hard work of change. And together, we chose to rebuild, to start over, to create something new and better out of the ashes of what we had lost. If you're reading this or watching this, and you're in a similar situation, if you have a child who's taken you for granted, who's excluded you, who's treated you like you don't matter, I want you to know something. You have choices. You don't have to accept being treated poorly. You don't have to keep sacrificing yourself, hoping they'll eventually appreciate you. You can set boundaries, can demand respect, can walk away if necessary. And that doesn't make you a bad parent. It makes you a person with dignity and self-worth. But I also want you to know that people can change that. If someone is willing to do the work, willing to be honest, willing to humble themselves, there is hope for reconciliation. It's not easy. It takes time and effort and consistent proof of change, but it's possible. I'm living proof of that. Marcus and I could have lost each other forever, but we didn't, because we both chose to fight for our relationship, chose to do the hard work of healing, chose to believe that love could overcome hurt and pride and all the damage that had been done. And if you're on the other side of this, If you're the child who's taken your parent for granted, who's been ashamed of where you came from, who's excluded the person who sacrificed everything for you, I want you to know something too. It's not too late. You can make this right. You can humble yourself, can apologize, can do the work of rebuilding what you've broken. But you have to be sincere. You have to be consistent. You have to understand that words aren't enough, that you have to prove through your actions day after day that you've really changed. And you have to accept that your parent might not be ready to forgive, might need time, might have boundaries that you don't like, but that you have to respect, because real change isn't about getting what you want. It's about becoming who you should be, regardless of the outcome. I never thought I would be here. Never thought I would have my son back, would have a real relationship with him, would feel valued and appreciated and loved the way I always deserved to be. There were so many times during those 6 months when I had cut him off, when I thought, this was it, this is how it ends. I've lost my son forever, and I made peace with that. Made peace with the possibility that Marcus might never change, might never come back, might choose pride and shame over our relationship, and making that peace, setting those boundaries, protecting myself. That was the healthiest thing I ever did, because it showed me that I was strong enough to survive without him, strong enough to build a life that made me happy, strong enough to know my own worth. And paradoxically, it was only when I was willing to lose Marcus that I was able to get him back, because as long as I was desperate for his love, desperate for his attention, desperate to be part of his life, I had no power, had no leverage, had no way to demand better treatment. But when I walked away, when I showed him that I would rather be alone than be disrespected, everything changed. He couldn't take me for granted anymore, couldn't treat me poorly and expect me to just accept it. He had to make a choice between his pride and his mother. And thankfully, eventually, he chose me. There's something else I want to talk about. Something I've been thinking about a lot lately, and that's the cost of shame. Marcus was ashamed of me, ashamed of my working-class background, ashamed that I wasn't wealthy and sophisticated, and that shame led him to hurt me, to exclude me, to treat me in ways that were cruel and unforgivable. But that shame didn't come from nowhere. It came from a society that values wealth over character, that measures success by material possessions instead of by integrity and kindness and love. It came from a culture that tells people they should be embarrassed of where they came from, if where they came from wasn't privileged and elite. And I want to say to anyone watching this who's struggling with shame about their background, about their family, about where they came from, that shame is a lie. It's a lie that society tells you to make you feel less than to make you believe that your worth is tied to your bank account or your zip code or your family's social status. But your worth has nothing to do with those things. Your worth comes from who you are, from your character, from how you treat people, from the love you give and receive. And if someone makes you feel ashamed of where you came from, if someone makes you feel like you need to hide your family or your background or your story, then that person doesn't deserve to be in your life, because the right people, the people who really matter, will value you for who you are, not for what you have. Marcus learned that lesson the hard way. He learned that all the wealth and status and impressive colleagues in the world couldn't fill the hole that was left when he lost me, couldn't give him the sense of purpose and meaning that comes from real relationships, from family, from love. He learned that being ashamed of where you came from means being ashamed of yourself, means denying the very experiences and struggles that made you who you are, and you can't build a life on denial and shame. You can only build a life on truth and authenticity and acceptance of yourself and where you came from. I think about the Marcus I raised, that little boy who was so proud of his mama, who used to brag to his friends about how hard I worked, who used to say he was going to take care of me when he grew up. And I realized that that boy never really went away. He just got lost for a while, got buried under years of ambition and status seeking and trying to fit into a world that told him his origins were something to be ashamed of. But he's back now, That boy is back in the body of a grown man who's learned that the things that really matter can't be bought, can't be faked, can only be earned through love and loyalty and showing up for the people who matter. Last month was my 57th birthday, and Marcus threw me a party, not at his mansion, but at the community center, where he volunteers invited all my friends from church, from book club, from my painting class. Invited William and my neighbors, invited his colleagues. Two, the ones he used to be ashamed to introduce me to, and he stood up in front of everyone and gave a speech. "I want to thank you all for coming to celebrate my mom," he said. "Mary Thompson, the strongest woman I know, the woman who worked 3 jobs to put me through school, who sacrificed everything to give me opportunities, the woman who raised me alone after my father died and never once complained, never once made me feel like I was a burden. I spent years taking her for granted, years, being ashamed of the very things I should have been proud of, years treating her like she didn't matter, and I almost lost her forever. But she gave me another chance, gave me the opportunity to become the man she raised me to be. And I'm standing here today to tell her and to tell all of you that I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of that chance. Mom, I love you. I'm proud of you. I'm grateful for you, and I will never take you for granted again." There wasn't a dry eye in that room. Everyone stood and applauded, and I sat there crying, happy tears, surrounded by people who loved me, who valued me, who saw my worth, and I thought about how far we had both come. Marcus and I, how much we had both grown, how we had taken something broken and painful and turned it into something beautiful and whole, and I realized that this was what redemption looked like. This was what healing looked like, not perfect, not without scars, but real and honest and full of love. Victoria stood up next, and she said something that surprised me. "I want to thank Mary too," she said, "because she taught me something important. She taught me that real strength isn't about hiding your vulnerabilities or pretending you don't need anyone or maintaining a perfect image. Real strength is about being honest about who you are, about setting boundaries, about standing up for yourself even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Mary, you showed me what it means to have dignity and self-respect, and I'm so grateful to have you in my life, to have you as an example of the kind of woman I want to be." After the party, Marcus and Victoria and William and I went out for dinner, just the 4 of us, and we talked about the future, about the wedding, about Marcus's foundation, about my travel plans, about all the good things that were ahead of us, and I realized that this was what family was supposed to look like. Not perfect, not without problems or conflicts, but full of love and respect and genuine care for each other's well-being. We laughed and told stories and made plans, and it felt right. Felt like we were exactly where we were supposed to be, like all the pain and struggle had been worth it to get to this place. "Mom, can I ask you something?" Marcus said as we were finishing dinner. "Of course. Do you ever regret it? Do you ever regret all the sacrifices you made for me, all the years you spent struggling and working yourself to exhaustion? Do you ever wish you had done things differently?" I thought about that question. Really thought about it. I regret that I sacrificed so much that I lost myself in the process. I said honestly, I regret that I didn't set boundaries earlier, didn't teach you that I deserved respect and consideration. I regret the years we lost because I was too proud to ask for help and you were too self-absorbed to offer it. But do I regret raising you? Do I regret working hard to give you opportunities? Do I regret loving you? No, Marcus. Don't regret that. I will never regret that, because you're my son, and everything I did because I loved you. But you deserve better, Marcus said. You deserve to have a life of your own, to pursue your own dreams, to not have to sacrifice everything. You're right, I did deserve better, I agreed. And now I have better. I have a life that makes me happy. I have my own dreams I'm pursuing. I have people in my life who value me, including you. And that's because I finally learned to value myself. Learned to demand better, learned to walk away when I wasn't getting the respect I deserved. So, yes, I wish things had been different. I wish I had learned these lessons earlier. I wish you had appreciated me sooner. But I don't regret the journey, because it brought us here to this moment, to this relationship, to this understanding. I'm going to make sure my kids never take their mother for granted, Marcus said. I'm going to teach them to appreciate her, to respect her, to value her, not just when they need something, but always. Good, I said. That's good, because the world needs more children who appreciate their parents more. People who understand that family isn't about what you can get from each other, but about what you can give, about supporting each other, about showing up even when it's hard. We've started a new tradition. Marcus and I, we have dinner together every Sunday, just the two of us, sometimes at his house, sometimes at my apartment, sometimes at a restaurant. But every Sunday we sit down and we talk, really talk about our weeks, about our feelings, about our lives. It's sacred time. That's just for us time where we can be honest and vulnerable and real, and it's become my favorite part of the week, that time with my son, when I can see the man he's become, when I can enjoy his company, when I can feel his love not through grand gestures or expensive gifts, but through his presence, through his attention, through his genuine interest in my life. Last Sunday, we were having dinner at a small Italian restaurant that Marcus loves, and he told me something that made my heart swell. Mom, I've been thinking about writing a book about our story, about what happened between us, about how we lost each other and found our way back. I think other people need to hear this, need to know that it's never too late to make things right. What would you call it? I asked. I don't know. Maybe something like the list, about how not being on that list at my gate was the wake-up call we both needed, or maybe the cost of shame, about how shame almost destroyed us, or maybe just coming home, about finding your way back to what really matters. What do you think? I think, I said, that whatever you call it, it needs to be honest. It needs to show the ugly parts, not just the redemption. It needs to show how badly you hurt me, how close we came to losing each other forever, because that's the truth. And the truth is what will help people. You're right, Marcus said. And Mom, I want you to write it with me. I want this to be both our stories, both our perspectives, both our truths, because it's not just my story of learning to appreciate you, it's your story of learning to value yourself, and both of those stories are important. So that's what we're doing. Marcus and I, we're writing our story together, sitting down every week, talking about the past, about the pain, about the lessons we learned, about the journey from brokenness to healing. And it's been therapeutic for both of us, getting to process everything that happened, getting to understand each other's perspectives, getting to create something meaningful from our pain, something that might help other families who are going through similar struggles. Victoria is part of it too. She's been sharing her perspective on what it was like to watch our relationship deteriorate, on her own complicity in Marcus's behavior, on what finally made her leave. I grew up in a family where image was everything, she told us, where what people thought about you mattered more than who you actually were, and I brought those values into my marriage with Marcus. I encouraged his worst impulses, his shame about his background, his desire to impress people who didn't really matter. And I'm ashamed of that. I'm ashamed that I was part of the problem instead of part of the solution, but I'm grateful that I eventually found the courage to leave. Grateful that I finally saw what really mattered. The three of us have become close in an unexpected way, bonded by our shared experience of losing ourselves and finding our way back. Victoria tells me often that I'm the mother she wishes she had had. My mother loves me, she says, but she's never shown me what real strength looks like, never modeled how to stand up for yourself, how to demand respect. You've taught me that, Mary, and I'm so grateful, and I've come to care for Victoria not just as my son's fiancée, but as a person in her own right, as a young woman who's learning and growing and trying to be better, just like Marcus, just like all of us. My life now is so different from what it was 3 years ago, when I was standing at those gates with my peach cobbler. I'm different, stronger, more confident, more aware of my own worth. I have people in my life who value me, I have activities and hobbies that bring me joy. I have a future that I'm excited about, and I have my son back. Not the version of him I thought I wanted. The perfect, successful son who never made mistakes, but the real Marcus, flawed and human. And still learning, but trying genuinely, trying to be better, and that's all I ever really wanted. Not perfection, just effort, just genuine love and respect. Just a son who saw me as a person and valued me accordingly. Last week I went back to that mansion, the one with the gates and the security cameras. But this time was different. This time when I pulled up to the gate, Marcus was standing there waiting for me. He had opened the gate, manually, wanted to greet me himself. "Welcome home, Mom," he said, hugging me tight. "Your room is ready. I made sure they put fresh flowers in there just the way you like." We walked into the house together, and he showed me something new he had done. He had commissioned a portrait of me, a beautiful painting, that now hangs in the main entryway. The first thing anyone sees when they enter his home. "I want everyone who comes here to see you first," he said. "I want them to know that you're the foundation of everything I have, everything I am. I want them to see the strong, beautiful woman who raised me, and I want them to know that I'm proud of you. Mom, prouder than I am of any achievement or possession. I'm proud that you're my mother." I stood there looking at that portrait, seeing myself through. Marcus's eyes, the artist, had captured something I hadn't even realized about myself. A strength, a dignity, a quiet power that came from years of surviving, years of persevering, years of refusing to give up even when things were impossibly hard. "Do you like it?" Marcus asked nervously. "I love it," I said, tears streaming down my face. "I love it, Marcus." He hugged me again and whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for giving me the chance to make things right. Thank you for being the best mother anyone could ask for, even when I didn't deserve it." We spent that evening together, Marcus and Victoria and William and I, sitting in the library talking about the book we were writing about, the foundation Marcus was building about, the wedding they were planning, about life and love and family and all the things that really matter. And I looked around at these people, at my son who had found his way back to me, at his fiancée, who had become like a daughter at William, who loved me just as I was, and I felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Gratitude for the hard times that had taught me my own strength. Gratitude for the pain that had forced me to grow. Gratitude for the second chances that had allowed us to rebuild. "You know, what I've learned," I said to them. "I've learned that sometimes the worst things that happen to us are actually the best things in disguise." That day at the gates, when I was told I wasn't on the list, was the worst day of my life at the time, but it was also the beginning of the best year of my life, because it forced me to face the truth, to set boundaries, to value myself. And it forced Marcus to face the truth about who he had become, and both of those things needed to happen before we could get to where we are now. "So you're saying you're grateful it happened?" Victoria asked. "In a way, yes." I said, "I'm not grateful for the pain. I'm not grateful for the hurt, but I'm grateful for what came from it, for the growth, for the change, for the relationship Marcus and I have now, which is so much healthier, so much more real than what we had before, when I was constantly sacrificing and he was constantly taking this relationship. We have now is built on mutual respect, and that's worth everything." Marcus nodded. "I'm grateful too, even though I'm ashamed of what I did, even though I wish I had never hurt you that way. I'm grateful that it happened, because you're right. It woke me up, made me see what I was losing, made me realize what really matters, and I'm a better man now because of it. A better son, a better partner, a better person. And that's because you had the courage to walk away, Mom. You had the courage to say enough to demand better, and that saved us both." We talked late into the night about our book, about the title we finally settled on, Not on the List. A story of lost love and learning to value what matters. About the chapters we would write, about the message we wanted to share. And we agreed that the most important message was this, that it's never too late to change, never too late to make things right, Never too late to rebuild a relationship that's been broken. If both people are willing to do the work, are willing to be honest, are willing to humble themselves and try again. But we also agreed that the second message was equally important, that you can't save a relationship by yourself. That if the other person isn't willing to change, isn't willing to take responsibility, isn't willing to treat you with respect, then you have to be willing to walk away, have to be willing to choose yourself, have to be willing to say that your dignity and self-worth are more important than any relationship, even with your own child. And that's not selfish. That's not cruel. That's self-preservation, that's healthy boundaries, that's love properly understood. I'm sitting here now in my beautiful apartment that Marcus helped me get, with William reading on the couch next to me with jazz playing softly in the background, with plans to visit Marcus tomorrow and then go to Paris next month and then volunteer at the foundation. Marcus started and then celebrate at his wedding. I feel content. I feel happy. I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I'm 57 years old. And I'm finally living my life on my own terms, finally pursuing my own dreams, finally surrounded by people who value me. And it's glorious. I think about that woman with the peach cobbler standing at the gates, and I want to tell her something. I want to tell her that she's stronger than she knows, that she deserves better than she's accepting, that walking away will be the hardest and best thing she ever does. I want to tell her that. I think about that woman with the peach cobbler standing at the gates, and I want to tell her something. I want to tell her that she's stronger than she knows, that she deserves better than she's accepting, that walking away will be the hardest and best thing she ever does. I want to tell her that the pain she's feeling right now won't last forever, that healing is possible, that her son will come back, but she has to be willing to let him go first. I want to tell her that the life she's living, the one where she sacrifices everything and gets nothing in return, is not the only option, that there's another way to live, a better way, where she matters, where her needs count, where she's valued and respected. But I can't tell her those things, because she's me and she had to learn them on her own, had to go through the fire to come out stronger on the other side, had to hit rock bottom before she could start climbing back up, and that's okay, because the journey was worth it. The pain was worth it. The struggle was worth it because it brought me here to this moment, to this life, to this understanding of who I am and what I deserve. If you're watching this video and you see yourself in my story, if you're the parent who's being taken for granted or the child who's been taking their parent for granted, I want you to know that change is possible, that relationships can be healed, that it's never too late to make things right. But I also want you to know that healing requires honesty, requires humility, requires both people being willing to look at their own behavior and take responsibility for their own part in the dysfunction. It requires the person who's been hurt to set boundaries, to demand respect, to be willing to walk away if necessary, and it requires the person who's done the hurting to genuinely change, to prove through consistent action, not just words, that they've learned, that they've grown, that they're different now. And most importantly, I want you to know that regardless of whether your relationship heals or not, you are valuable, you matter, you deserve to be treated with respect and dignity. And if you're not getting that, then you have every right to walk away, to choose yourself, to build a life that makes you happy, even if that means being alone. Because being alone is better than being with people who don't value you. Being alone with your dignity intact is better than being surrounded by people who take you for granted. My name is Mary Elizabeth Thompson. I'm 57 years old. My son invited me to his mansion, and when I arrived, the maid said I wasn't on the list, and that moment, that horrible, painful, devastating moment, changed my life in ways I never could have imagined it. Broke me down and built me back up stronger. It destroyed a relationship that was already broken and cleared the way for something new, something better, something real. And I will always be grateful for that moment. Not because it didn't hurt, because it did, but because it taught me the most important lesson I've ever learned, that I am valuable with or without anyone else's approval, that I deserve to be treated with respect, and that I have the power to demand that respect or walk away, and to Marcus, Wherever you are right now, I want to say thank you. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for doing the work. Thank you for proving that people can change, that relationships can heal, that it's never too late to make things right. I'm proud of you, son. I'm proud of the man you've become, and I'm grateful every single day that you're my son, and that I'm your mother, and that we found our way back to each other. This is my story, our story, and I'm sharing it because I believe it can help someone out there who's going through something similar, who's standing at their own metaphorical gates, being told they're not on the list, who's wondering if they should keep trying or walk away, who's struggling with the decision between loving someone and loving themselves, and I want them to know that you can do both. You can love someone and still set boundaries. You can care about someone and still demand respect. You can be a good parent and still prioritize your own well-being. These things are not mutually exclusive. They're actually necessary for any healthy relationships. Oh, to anyone watching this who's in pain, who's being taken for granted, who's wondering if they deserve better, let me tell you something, you do deserve better. You deserve to be valued and appreciated and loved the way you love others. And if you're not getting that, then it's time to make some changes. It's time to set some boundaries. It's time to choose yourself. And trust me when I say that's not selfish. That's self-preservation. That's the beginning of healing. That's the first step toward the life you deserve. Did this story resonate with you? Have you ever been excluded by your own family? Have you ever overheard your children or relatives planning something behind your back that broke your heart? Have you ever had to make the difficult decision to walk away from family members who were taking you for granted? I want to hear your stories in the comments below. Your experiences might give someone else the courage to stand up for themselves the way I did. Were there warning signs you missed? Did you set boundaries and demand respect? Or are you still accepting less than you deserve? Share your story because someone out there is standing at their own gates right now, wondering if they should keep trying or walk away, and your comment might be exactly what they need to hear. And if this video made you think about your own family relationships, or made you realize you deserve better treatment, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories about family betrayal, setting boundaries, and finding the strength to choose yourself. There's a whole playlist of family drama stories on my channel that will open your eyes. Click the video on your screen right now to watch the story about my son who brought home his new fiancée, and it turned out to be my best friend from college who had disappeared 15 years ago. Trust me, that story will blow your mind even more than this one. See you in the comments, and remember, you are valuable, you deserve respect, and you have the power to demand better treatment or walk away. Sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who take us for granted the most. And it's okay to choose yourself. It's not selfish, it's survival. Stay strong out there, everyone, and never forget your worth.